the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap-ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own, tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues. Guess if you ain't at the table, you on the menu. And I'm that spitter, baby, they don't want you to see, but everybody south of Capitol Hill's rocking with me. Boys smoke the trays and plan to getting their life together. I'm comfortable with my role, so I'm like, whatever. Me, I ain't got a job, but I work hard. And you don't work hard, but you got a job. The irony is I'm judged while you feel the applause. I'm slept on, that's why I had to set this alarm. My dudes is armed, I'm armed with this arm charm. Body banging like she got that cream from Barry Bonds. Yeah,
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
That trade season is here, a real hitter with a mic, I'm everything that they fear. With that hood ain't the same, I was all on their ass, I'm level-headed. So yo, my dudes love when I spaz, and I'm so over Seattle's passive-aggressive attitude. They don't call you back, what they really saying is F you. While I'm from the same place, I move at a different pace. I prefer if you just said it to my face, damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it
I hate
for
these
us.
average dudes with they average spit, writing average rhymes, knocking average chicks. The closer I get, I can feel the people starting to shift. I'm loyal to a fault, and everybody can't come with. Rap's a rich man's game, I'm only playing with change. They bang models and singers, I'm knocking my old flame, I'm different. The crowd, I move with the chosen few. Black thoughts, I could be the front man for the roots. No diamonds and gold, I'm on my sticks and stones. If we can see your penny line, you should have on a thong. My team is strong, through this fire we forged a bond. And they already know what it is when I get on to the hearse. Party like it's December 31st. When I'm on my deathbed, I probably cracking my nurse. You ain't got the bars to compete. I'm a verbal athlete, deflating these boys so they say that I cheat. Damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Yeah. I should probably start by apologizing for the long wait, man. You know, I know I be tripping. But I'm not just a rapper, I'm an artist. And, you know, my creative process is a little bit different than most. Nonetheless, I want to welcome everybody out to the Dre's Experience. I got TCF in the building. My whole camp's here with me. I got the band in here laying this cool-ass vibe. And I'm Seattle's own. Let's get into it.
So good. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Update Show. I am your co-host, Trey Holiday. And already the vibes up in here is feeling real good. Energy's good. Let's get it. What's up, Big O? Happy Monday, man.
Trey Holiday.
Hey.
You know, Trey Simmons said it best on Friday when he was like, man, the energy in the morning show is just off the hook. You know, we keep it extra lit over here.
There we go.
How was your weekend?
It was so great. Got to see my son's, learning showcase, all the amazing things he's doing. Shout out to the Learning Center, Tender Loving Care. I mean, the mobile teacher. She goes by many names, Miss Catrice Dennis, doing some amazing things with our babies out there. So it was great.
Hey,
great weekend.
Big old love the kids.
Yeah.
I want to welcome everybody to the Morning Update Show and remind you this right now is the perfect opportunity to tag and share the stream. Go ahead and tag and share the stream with people that you know would benefit from culturally relevant news and information emanating from right here in the Emerald City. Got a good show for you today. We were supposed to have Dow Constantine, the executive. They canceled, which is understandable. But they didn't send no rescheduled dates. Usually when we get a cancellation, it's like people in office cancel all the time. But then they're like, we'll reschedule. We haven't heard back from Executive Constantine's office as to the rescheduled date. So hopefully we will. Yeah. And we'll let you know when the county executive will join us. That was the plan for today. We got a great show in store for everybody. Over the weekend, I talked to Erica C. Barnett about this Compassion Seattle charter amendment that they're pushing through. So we got a extended interview right there. It's about 5 minutes. Also talked to our man JC from the OVT down in Atlanta. We've been talking about all the stuff going on in Atlanta, and just recently Major League Baseball has decided to pull out of the All-Star game in Atlanta. Former President Trump has called for a boycott against Major League Baseball. So we're going to talk about that as well. And also we got a clip here from Malcontent News. He did a good job up there. David Obelts, man, bringing that story of what's going on in Marysville Pilchuck. Now it's a big story. There was a press conference over the weekend and some of everything else.
Yeah, got it out.
Before we jump into everything today, though, this is real serious. There you go. I want you to bring the camera up on me. Thank you. Appreciate it. Today, going to my first Mariners game in a very long time. I'll be joined by Jake Gravbrot and Eric Calligraphy, and we're going to the safe. Just wanted to let everybody know this is already going to be a good day. No matter what's in the news, you'll find us at the ballpark tonight against the Sox. Mariners are 2-1. They came back and they won 4-0 on Saturday, huh? Against the Giants. So 2-1 in the middle of the pack right now. And so excited about that. Jumping into things. So we want to put this up real quick. Wishing DMX, man. I don't know. It's not looking good for X right now. Man, grave condition there in New York. They said he suffered a heart attack after a drug overdose. So we're sending our prayers out to DMX.
Absolutely. You know, I saw this come through the airwaves. It was all over certain feeds. And man, you know, we know that DMX has gone through different bouts, right? And so I loved one of the clips that they showed of him on the Breakfast Club where he was doing prayer. He's like, no, let's touch and agree. Let's put our hands together and make sure we do this the right way. But yeah, sending so much love and support to DMX's family. Again, I always think about the families that are dealing with this. So sending love.
Yeah, man. And the Rough Riders, you know, it's a bike crew. The Rough Riders is deep out there. You know what I'm saying? They're having another prayer vigil at 5 o'clock. Also, wanted to update everybody. I usually do this on the first day of the month or the last day of the previous month. Reached out to the Seattle Police Department about Antonio Mays Jr. Might remember Antonio Mays Jr., the 16-year-old that was killed in the chop. So I always reach out every month to see if there's any updates on that case. The Seattle Police Department reports that there's no update on the murder of Antonio Mays Jr., but they said that the case is open and the case is being investigated. So, you know, always that's something that sticks with us here on the Morning Update show. All right, so to Minneapolis we go. Here's a clip right here from CBS this morning. It talks about what Easter Sunday was like there in Minneapolis and also a preview of the trial today.
In Minneapolis, people gathered on Easter Sunday close to the spot where George Floyd was killed nearly a year ago. The murder trial of fired police officer Derek Chauvin begins its second week this morning, and our Jamie Yukis is outside the courthouse where it'll happen. That's in Minneapolis. Jamie, good morning to you.
Good morning. Minneapolis is increasing law enforcement presence on the streets this week for the trial. George Floyd's death affected people far beyond the city. We even met a woman here yesterday who drove from Iowa to pay her respects. But at the heart of this tragedy is a community still grieving.
An Easter celebration gathered here in the World Outreach for Christ Church parking lot, just feet from the memorial marking where George Floyd died. Pastor Curtis Farrar honored Floyd during his Easter service.
It is going to take the power of God to get racism out of our human nature.
Julie Jefferson reflected on Floyd's death after the service.
It's hard to understand how one human being could do that to another human being. For us that goes to this church, no matter what they change around here, you're going to always remember that moment.
Sammy Birch lives not far from where Floyd died back in May.
Prayer is one act of action, but you got to take action as well. Protest, teach people rights from wrong.
What would justice look like?
Well, to be treated as one. I mean, I'm no different than you, you're no different than me.
As the Derek Chauvin trial hangs over Minneapolis, Jefferson says the testimony has been too painful to watch.
I have two sons. They're grown and married now, and I look at that as if that could have been them.
Testimony like Friday's from the most senior Minneapolis police officer who was highly critical of Chauvin's use of force on Floyd.
Putting your knee on the neck for that amount of time is just uncalled for.
Chauvin's attorneys dispute those claims and argue it was a combination of health conditions and drugs that caused Floyd to die. We expect more officers to take the stand this week, including the chief of the Minneapolis Police Department, who fired Chauvin days after the incident and apologized to Floyd's family.
Jamie, thank you.
Trey Holiday.
Yeah, I mean, this one right here, we keep following this case, but again, it's clear that there was a lot of people who understand there was no reason to have the knee on the neck for as long as he had it on there. And, no matter what, the defense is trying to say, I mean, they have to do their jobs, I guess. They took on this case and, they're going to do what they can, but this just none of this really sits right with so many of us in the public. When you have a lead police officer that was just on that stand saying, it makes no sense to have the knee on the neck for that long. He was no longer needing to be subdued, and yet Chauvin still had his knee there. So, I mean, we see this. And one thing I do want to point out too is I love seeing the resilience of the folks in the community. I mean, that is important. And I think that right now there's a strong message of positivity that needs to be there permeating the streets.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that, Chauvin's on trial for his life, so of course he's mounting a defense. But what's crazy is how many other people are defending Chauvin. You get what I'm saying? Like, of course, he's going to put a defense. There's a lot of people out there who are, finding a way to excuse these actions and some everything else. And I think that we all have to remember that George Floyd is not on trial here. Derek Chauvin is on trial. People keep wanting to put George Floyd on trial. George Floyd is not on trial here. And, irregardless of these smoke bombs and distractions that want to be thrown, that's not the case. So we're going to stay on top of that. Moving along, this story out of Marysville Pilchuck High School, and brought to us by Malcontent News. David Obelts has been on top of this story. He talked to Dr. I think Janice Green last week from the Snohomish County NAACP, and they were talking about threats that are being made against students there at Marysville Pilchuck High School that had not been followed up on, right? And it had been kind of like they've been talking about this for a while, for maybe the last 6 weeks, or whatever. But David and Malcontent News hopped on it. Then they sent a clip over to us last week, and we played it here. KBCS, who also simulcast some of our stuff, was also there, and other media have jumped on this story now, and now people up there basically are having to do their jobs. But this is a real emotional clip right here from a man named JJ Franks, and his daughter was one of the people who was threatened, apparently maybe on a list there of people these students said they wanted to kill. It's some beeps in here. It's bleeped out, but I'll just let you know it's some sensitive language in this clip.
I'm here in the capacity as of a father. So any of you parents out there, I hope that you can connect with me. We have to make a statement today that I'm hearing that these students that made these death threats said it was just a joke. When another student threatens another student's life and says that they want to kill him, that is not a joke. And when another student threatens another student's life, that threatens all of our children's lives. Let us not turn a blind eye because these were black students and minority students that our lives are any less. Black lives do matter. In December of 2020, in a leadership class, they were in a breakout Zoom class, unsupervised. And they started talking about, we want to kill all black people. They said, what about that sister, Gianna? They said, yeah, we want to kill that Gianna. This is in the police report. You can get it with the public disclosure request. It's in the report. They said that they wanted to kill my daughter, my 15-year-old daughter. to kill that nigger Gianna. And you're going to try to tell me that's a joke? The prosecuting attorney's office said, we did not press charges because the family did not want to, and we did a diversion plan with these two students that were having this conversation about killing black people and killing niggers and killing my daughter, Gianna. With all in light of what's happening in our nation, we cannot take a death threat as a joke. Why is it so hard for the Marysville School District to understand our pain? That's why we are demanding the resignation of Jason Thomas, Lori Knudsen, and Rod Merrill and the consortium consultants. We're demanding that. You have failed at your most important responsibility, to keep the classroom safe and to protect the learning environment.
Oh my goodness. As a mother, it's not right. Period, period, period. What we have seen in this nation, what we have experienced in our country, it is clear that racial hate can easily lead to death, to mass death, to personalized death, to specific death. They're calling out names and being able to say that it was just a joke and not have charges pressed against them. I feel that parent's pain right there. I feel his passion. I feel where all of them are coming from, because I promise you this much. Let that have been my son's name on the lips of some. Let that have been one of my babies. And all I got to say is I would be right there with them, demanding that any adult who allowed that kind of behavior to flourish with a diversion plan, no. When they talk about throwing the book at young Black people, okay, throughout this entire nation, oh, we got to make an example out of them. We can't stand for this. We can't stand for that. Where is that right now? Where is that pathway right now? I'm saying that that's exactly what needs to happen, because these young people, they need to understand that their hate cannot be flourishing in that way. While they're on school laptops, while they're doing school activities, they're sitting there having a conversation in a breakout Zoom chat to say, we need to kill this person. We need to kill that person. I'm going to tell you this right now. If the Marysville School District does not get this right, I know that there are people that will be coming from all over outside of Marysville to say, this is not right. We stand in solidarity with those parents. We stand in solidarity with the action to say they need to be fired immediately. Resignations immediately. They don't need to be able to get their pensions or their 401ks. No, fire them. That is not okay. And those kids and their families, they need to understand, nah, this is not right. It's time to actually make an example out of them and stop allowing white supremacy to thrive in this regard. This is a lot. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, again, want to call attention to David Obelts and Malcontent News, because this is a story that kind of been out there for a few months, but nobody was giving it any attention, right? This was something, and we had talked to some parents on our list of things here. We had talked to somebody up there in Snohomish a few weeks ago, and this is something that had got no attention, no anything, whatever. And so David at Malcontent followed it up, and this is out there now. And so whatever was swept under the rug, they might have to lift the rug back up. And these things are going to really get exposed there. And it also tells you, it's like, how can people be making these blatant threats like that and it's disregarded? I mean, time and time and time again, we just see the double standard everywhere. But I can tell you this much: this is a story that ain't going nowhere, and I mean, it's out there. We're gonna stay on top of it. I know Malcontent's on top of it, and we'll see it through.
Yeah, this for me, we talk about and tie a lot of these cases back to the history of what we've had to experience in this nation. And I just think about that father there, saying literally, like, he couldn't even almost get it out that they called out his daughter's name. This is again trauma that young girl is going to have to experience, looking over her shoulder, wondering if they got friends that are also thinking the same thing. It carries on, y'all. It doesn't just stop with one day they made a threat. It doesn't just stop there. We have seen it play out. We've seen Columbine and the mass amounts of shootings on school grounds in this country in particular way too many times to be looking at this as a lighthearted issue. It is not. And I think about that family. I think about the multitude of families in this country that are always the ones bearing the brunt end of these traumatic experiences. Man, I'm glad that we're following up on this. And thank you to David and Malcolm Tango, because ultimately we need to see this. It needed to be aired. I don't care what's going on, but the fact that these two young people, white young men, were able to make these kind of threats during school time and not be charged is horrendous. I'm glad we're staying on this. I'm glad, David, that you are staying on this and that you'll be able to give us the clips, because we need to know more about this.
Yeah, no, for sure. Got one more thing here before we go to break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about this Compassion Seattle Charter Amendment. This is from King 5. I saw the bus this morning. So King County Metro, there's some buses here that says King County Metro knows that Black Lives Matter. So we'll play this clip here from King 5.
Birthed out of last summer's death of George Floyd and protests for racial justice.
I had a lot of emotions going on with me over these obviously a lot of people have over these last few years, especially this last year.
An expression of pain backlit by the Derek Chauvin trial, the former Minneapolis police officer charged in the death of George Floyd.
The emotions swelled up inside of me.
Juan Gilbert Hood III is one of 3 artists, all King County Metro employees who've designed work inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement.
I got my pencil, got my pens, and sat down and put it to paper.
Hood's work, these 2 posters about Black pride and unity, are on display at Metro work sites across the county. 2 buses are fully wrapped in this mural designed by transit operator Robert L. Horton, and more than 200 buses have this artwork by Sandra Padilla, images of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Aiyana Jones, a 7-year-old who was killed in a 2010 police raid.
Do you hope this sparks more movement for the movement?
I do. I hope it does.
Watching the Chauvin trial play out in real time and watching buses pass with this stern reminder of historic injustices, Hood says he's ready to see action.
Let's sit down with who we need to sit down with and hash out what needs to be done so that everyone can feel safe with one another.
Britt Moore, King 5 News.
It's like I said, I saw one of those buses this morning and then happened to come across a story here. But King County Metro.
Hey, the one thing about it is that as the movement has progressed, it's great to see that entities like King County Metro can recognize that Black Lives Matter. It's one of those things where it's so much more than a slogan for us who are living in this country with this skin tone or variations of these skin tones. It really is. And so kudos to King County Metro for, really acknowledging that and doing something to make it really blatant and, public facing.
You all right, Trey?
No, that was a lot.
The story in Marysville?
It's a lot. It's our babies. I'm trying to keep it together today because it's just not okay. It's not cool. It's not right. Racism is so deep and it has played out so much in this country with violence. We talk about it all the time that, when we think about racism, a lot of folks will say, look, we're at war. This is almost feels like war. When they storm the Capitol and they are allowed to go back to their homes, these charges are coming out slow, but the hammer is not being brought down on those folks. And then you see young kids, because it's like they think it's okay. There's examples for them that make them feel safe saying something like that in a school setting. They didn't do that privately. They didn't do that, say, let's meet up at the cafe, let's meet up at the park and talk about this. They did that during school time, because they felt like they would not be charged. They felt like they would not be made an example of. They don't have the same level of understanding or discrimination put against them that makes them change the way that they're going to move and makes them say, you know what, that ain't even cool. Not saying they should have done it in private, but I'm just saying the idea is that they felt safe doing that, and that the administration said, well, we're going through a divergent plan. I mean, I think about this in terms of policing as well. Like, we've seen it. They've gone through different reforms and different trainings, and yet somebody will still put their knee on some black man's neck for over almost 9 minutes. This, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And we always are telling it in a news format, but we're also black people who have to also, I got to go home, talk to my babies about this, right? And always educate them and always get them to be understanding of who they are as young black men that are going to grow up to be old, black men one day. And they're going to have to deal with the same kinds of discrimination and idealism that led to George Floyd's death. So it's a lot.
I think interesting as well. I'm pretty sure Marysville Pilchuck there was a school shooting there before years ago. So you would think that there would be extra heightened around any threats around the school shooting.
Yeah.
Well, man, I know it's impactful, and me and I'm sure our audience appreciates your honesty and in talking about these things. We got our headlines, but what's most important is how we feeling about stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Oh, means a lot.
Yeah. We'll take a short break right now. When we come back, we're talking about the Compassion Seattle Charter Amendment. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
Public Health, Seattle, King County, Zero Youth Detention, along with our partners from across the South King County region, are committed to reducing violence and creating the conditions needed for our neighborhoods to be safe and free of crime. Too often, the response to crime and violence has been a piecemeal approach with a program here and a program there. When family units collapse, schools fail to educate, the economy fails to produce jobs, and crime rises, we've looked to law enforcement and punitive measures to save us. Nothing could be more wrong or further from the truth. Law enforcement can't shoulder all the burden or take the rest of us off the hook. We are acknowledging the lived experiences of Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. We are centering community as the experts who can effectively identify key issues related to systems, policies, and practices that impact children, families, and communities of color across this region. Those most impacted by the issues will help call out and identify the root causes, including structural and systemic factors. 150 residents will partner with King County to develop strategies, solutions, and an action plan that explicitly addresses system changes needed and eliminates barriers to access for Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. These residents will also identify the criteria used to measure our collective success. Simply put, we need your help as we do the work needed to make King County the safest in this country. It will take specific commitments from all of us, community members, our young people, elders, and leaders from the sectors all across this region. Together, we will get this work done. Please click the link below and sign up for a work group. Or you can recommend a co-facilitator from community for each work group. We look forward to hearing your ideas, concerns, feedback, and solutions as we build a community where all our children can be happy, healthy, hopeful, safe, and thriving.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. This is ZYD right there, Zero Youth Detention, for especially residents of King County who are watching. the morning update show. We want to challenge you. Go there to zeroyouthdetention.com/work groups and give your input on, man, how they can go with a regional approach to disrupt gun violence across King County. A lot of people want to talk about it, make comments, things like that. This is how you can actually be part of the process. There was ZYD.
Absolutely. I think it's so important, and really the ways that we can bring more voices into the conversation. I think they're doing a great job, on it. It's just a great community centric approach.
Yeah, sure enough. All right. So now some big news that came out last week is there's a new charter amendment. That's basically an amendment to the charter of the city. It's being proposed by a group called Compassion Seattle. And what they wanted to say is that like a certain percentage of the budget basically has to go to human services to be able to deal with homelessness. They got to provide like 2,000 beds. Flip side, they got to keep parks clean. I talked to Erica Barnett about this. Unfortunately, Compassion Seattle wasn't compassionate enough to send us any media information, so we were left out. Even though Black people make up 30% of the homeless population in Seattle, no one thought to send us anything. So, of course, Hannah over at Cairo, she filled us in, and then I talked to Erica, and then also Kevin Schofield wrote an article about it. So Compassion Seattle, we're a platform here that's targeting the Black community in Seattle, a community that's disproportionately impacted by homelessness. So it'd be great, to include us in your communications, because we'd love to talk to you more about it. But for now, here's Erica C. Barnett. Whole interview is up right now on our YouTube page and also on our Instagram, and you can watch the whole interview there. It's about 18 minutes. This is a 5-minute segment right here.
This is an amendment to the city's constitution, essentially, that would require the city within 1 year to create 2,000 units of what they're calling emergency housing, which is basically anything from shelter to permanent housing. In practice, it'll probably be shelter beds. And the amendment would also require the city in perpetuity to spend 12% of its general fund budget on human services, which is a little more than they spend this year, and a lot more than they've spent in previous years. And the third thing it would do is it would say that in the future, once parks and public spaces are cleared of encampments through people moving into shelter, that they would stay clear. So essentially it all but reinstates the practice of encampment sweeps in the future. The language is mushy enough, I would say, that people who oppose removing encampments can get behind it. But I also think, if you look at the people who are in this coalition, right, it's the Chief Seattle Club, it's, as you said, the Defender Association, it's the Downtown Seattle Association, Plymouth Housing, and the Chamber of Commerce is also backing it, but not a part of the coalition that is, officially has their name on this. And I think, if you look at these groups, they've allied in the past on a lot of things. Like the Chief Seattle Club is, a downtown group that is very much kind of tied up with the Downtown Seattle Association. Same thing with LEAD. A lot of these folks are on each other's boards. The Downtown Emergency Service Center has John Scholes, the head of the DSA, on its board. So this has been called a surprising or unlikely coalition, but I actually think it's not that surprising. I think a lot of these folks are, have very much worked together in the past. I mean, remember, the Public Defender Association runs LEAD, which is Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. It's a program that they operate historically with the Seattle Police Department. So while this is, homeless service groups and downtown business groups coming together, it's not as surprising as, say, if it was a homeless advocacy group that wasn't active in the downtown area. I mean, you don't see groups like the Seattle King County Coalition on Homelessness signing on to this, at least not yet. So I think it kind of remains to be seen who else is going to sign on to this proposal from the homeless advocacy world. It would be great if the city of Seattle, and if this spurs the city of Seattle to actually do something about homelessness. I mean, the language of the amendment says that the next mayor essentially is going to have to provide 2,000 shelter beds, or units of housing. And if that happens, that will be amazing. That will really make a dent in the unsheltered, homelessness problem in the city. The downside is, I mean, there's a few potential downsides that I see. One is that, is this magical thinking? I mean, we're going to have a new mayor next year in January, and we're saying that whoever that person is, he or she is going to have to, do something that has never been done in the history of the city, which is stand up all these new shelter beds. I mean, if you look at, not just Mayor Durkin, our current mayor, but past mayors, they've talked a really big game about actually doing something about homelessness. But when you actually start trying to procure the contracts and, just going through the whole political process, it doesn't happen. And I don't think a charter amendment is like a magical, spell that's going to break that logjam all of a sudden, because the political realities are still going to be there. I want to see who else is going to support it, whether it's just this coalition that's come together. I want to see who's funding it. Right now, the Downtown Seattle Association is the main backer. Does it get a bunch of chamber dollars? Does it, is there a large coalition of homeless advocates who are going to be supporting it financially? That kind of tells you where the campaign is going to go. I want to see how they're selling it to voters, because they have to get 33,000 valid signatures. So that means, around 40,000 people or so are going to need to sign this thing. If you're walking into the Safeway, like, what is the person saying to you that's trying to get you to sign it? Are they saying, this will fund homeless services? Are they saying this will get encampments out of your line of vision? How they sell it to people is going to be really, really important in kind of knowing what this is really about. Because again, this came out of Tim Burgess. He was kind of a former city council member and 2-month mayor, was the person who pushed this forward to the point where it is right now. And, I mean, when I think about Tim Burgess, I think about his unsuccessful effort to get an aggressive panhandling law passed, which got vetoed. So not somebody I necessarily associate with compassionate solutions to homelessness, right? And so I want to see just kind of where this goes from here. Now that everybody's come out with this big announcement and said we've all come together and this diverse coalition, quote unquote, is supporting this. Like, who's really behind it? What is it? What is it going to take to actually get it passed by voters? And I think that's going to tell us a lot more about how it's going to be used ultimately if it passes.
Wow.
All right. So charter amendments. So there's a lot of stuff right there with Erica C. Barnett. And then the full interviews up there on our Instagram and also on our YouTube. Probably go up on our and on our LinkedIn. We all over the place. But basically says the city is this law. They got to provide 2,000 units of shelter, and then also keep the parks clean and a bunch of stuff there in between and everything else. And like I said, we haven't heard. I got an introduction to Tim Burgess through somebody else the other day. They emailed me, but it'll be interesting. Get somebody from Compassion Seattle here on the Morning Update show so they can speak on their own behalf about their initiative. But one thing Kevin Schofield pointed out, though, SCC Insight, was that what he said is that a charter amendment basically means that people have given up on the elected officials to make something happen. It's like, man, people have given up on city council or the other elected officials, the mayor and the city attorney. And that's an indication of, if it passes, that clearly the electeds weren't able to figure out some kind of solution here around homelessness.
Yeah, the thing is one thing I really appreciate about how Erica just described all of that is that we get an inside look, right? We understand a little bit more about the groups that make up Compassion Seattle. And I also like how she pointed out, it's about how they're selling it, which when I'm hearing this, it looks like they could be selling it in a multitude of ways, right? Depending on the audience. If they are, with folks that are really, wanting to clean up the parks, they're going to talk about that. If they're really about folks who are looking for resources for our unsheltered, those who are unhoused, they can talk about the 2,000 beds. So they kind of are trying to do a little bit on both sides here. But I gotta say that I really appreciate Erica being really candid about how when she looks at kind of, Tim Burgess and thinking about, him trying to pass a really progressive panhandling tax, that it doesn't immediately, panhandling law doesn't immediately result in her thinking about the people, him with compassion. And so, I mean, sometimes it is about the name. Sometimes it's about the marketing of certain things. But I think that there is a lot more that we can uncover here.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good too. Like I said, we'll definitely be talking about it more. It's going to be on the ballot. But we've consistently talked to Erica C. Barnett around homeless issues with a story there in Mercer Island and out there in Renton, and then the regional homelessness authority and some everything else. So we'll continue that, and hopefully we'll get somebody from Compassion Seattle on here as well soon who can tell us more about this charter amendment. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, checked in with JC from the OVT. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. So some of you guys might remember, if you watched the anniversary show, that we went to our guy JC down in Atlanta, the OVT network. JC was actually a journalist, is a journalist who we met covering CHOP, and we took JC under our wing when he was out here in Seattle, but he's back there in Atlanta, Georgia. I checked in with JC to talk to him about this recent legislation that was passed there, this voter suppression. Also, the arrest of Park Cannon, the legislator who was knocking on Governor Kemp's door. And lastly, Major League Baseball pulling out of Atlanta for the All-Star game. I thought that our viewers would benefit from just, getting the perspective from the common man, Black man on the streets in Atlanta. What are people saying about this bill?
I think the main thing for Atlanta is we're surprised that it happened this quickly, but we're not necessarily surprised that it happened at all, right? Because America's history is to make enormous progress and then to make even stronger regress. So I think it's more so, I don't think anyone was expecting this quick of a backlash, because when it's done so quickly like this, you have to scramble to kind of figure out, okay, wow, well, we just got all of these voters registered. We just flipped the state. We just did all of these things. And now we have to refigure out how to counteract this, or if it's even able to be counteracted in time enough for the next primaries.
Right. And so people there in Atlanta specifically feel like this was 100% kind of like revenge for the massive voter turnout there, and actually Georgia flipping from red to blue.
Absolutely. You can just expect you can expect racist white people to be racist and white. That's just what happens. That's just literally, we had all of this progress with Barack Obama, and then we get Trump right afterwards. It's the last bastion of white supremacy and patriarchy, just holding on for dear life.
Right. And now moving on here to the day that the bill was signed, Governor Kemp signed the bill into law in his ceremonial office. They said that the painting behind there was a former plantation, but on the other side of the door was a state legislator, Park Cannon, knocking on the door. And we all saw this legislator being arrested. Actually, the police placed her under arrest and now actually facing charges. What was the response there on the ground of AT aliens when you guys saw that?
Again, shocked but not surprised. Like, let's be honest, the police have been used as tools to clear Black and brown opposition for centuries, right? It's literally, it goes from slave patrol to police. Like, there's not really a big difference. So again, shocked but not surprised, definitely some outrage. All Ms. Cannon wanted him to do was like, if you're going to sign this bill that's going to impact all of these people, at least, you know, do it in front of everybody. You know, put your racism where your mouth is. And it's just really interesting to me because we have Republican, white, male, cisgendered people appropriating terminology and culture from Black Twitter to gaslight the entire state and country while they tramping on Black people's rights. That's just, you can't, it doesn't get no better than that.
Can you give an example of what you've just broken down right there?
So basically, Governor Kemp released a statement about how cancel culture and what is it, woke culture is the reason why the MLB and other people are coming out against this bill, not the fact that it's inherently racist and calling out to be the new Jim Crow.
Right. And now, speaking of Major League Baseball, we see the Major League Baseball said, man, they're pulling out of Atlanta for the All-Star game. And what's the feeling like there, first of all, on the ground when people there in Atlanta, people that you hang and roll with, when you heard that news? And then also, former President Trump has now called for a boycott of Major League Baseball.
That part must have just happened. I didn't know the last part, but that's really funny. That guy's still there. Mostly everybody is like, at least somebody is doing something, right? Like, I think it speaks to Major League Baseball is headquartered in New York City, and they've taken more of a substantive stance than Delta and Coca-Cola, who are headquartered here in Atlanta. You know, the CEO of both of those companies gave these really like half-hearted apologies and statements because of pressure from outside sources. And it's just really one of those things where it's the age of watching what a company does versus watching what a company says.
Right. Yeah. I was a bit disappointed by Ed Bastian's original statement around the bill. You know, I'm a Delta Diamond, been a Delta Flyer most of my life. And it sounded like Delta initially just wanted the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the company that I have a lot of friends in the airline industry. This is the company that gave their employees Black Lives Matter spin before, you know, it was, well, maybe kind of before it was cool, before everybody was doing it. And then to have them just be quiet on such a major substantive issue that affects the people that are majority Black that work at the main base here in Atlanta. It's just kind of one of those things where we see you give this lip service, we see you do these performative actions, but when it's really time to, you know, put your feet to the pavement, you're just like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. It's just a little voter suppression. That's cool. It'll blow over.
JC from OVT Network.
Man, it's great to hear from JC, honestly. And, you know, he's really speaking about so many things that even us over here in the Pacific Northwest, we understand and I think share much of the sentiment. You know, when we talk about, regardless of how liberal we are or not, but when we talk about these regressive measures, we always, especially during, you know, the season of voting, we showcase how serious King County in particular is around voting. And so, you know, to hear this, you know, again, the fact that it did pass so quickly, I think was shocking to so many of us. And ultimately, you know, good for the MLB to say, yeah, we're not going to be, you know, in Atlanta, we're pulling out. I think that it requires so many more entities to stand in solidarity. And, you know, it is unfortunate that Coca-Cola and Delta didn't do so, but I think that there's room, man. People need to hop on board.
You know, what's interesting is it's like, America has very rarely dealt with these issues directly, legislature, stuff like that. Some things have happened, but some of the biggest changes, excuse me, in our culture have come around through these ancillary things like baseball, you know, and believe me, you know, people were saying much worse when Jackie Robinson went to play for the Dodgers. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You think boycott baseball now? You know, and so when you look at these, and they said that the biggest thing that integrated the South, they were talking about how the SEC schools, which are all white, started playing some of these other colleges, had black skill players, and they was, it was getting whooped on. And they was like, man, we gotta get some black folks on the team. You know what I'm saying? It's but sports has been a platform for racial justice and equality beginning here, and so when people, they tell you shut up and dribble, they tell you, oh, it's this and that or whatever, but for a lot of black people, this is this story, especially the story around baseball, and when we talk about Jackie Robinson and the Hank Aaron's and all these kind of things that are out there, man, and so they pulled out. And
yeah. Well, I think it's important too, because you're absolutely right. When we talk about major progressive measures that this country has really done with regard to particularly around race relations and social justice, we see a lot of it happening where, we think about the civil rights era. I mean, I just watched One Night in Miami. I don't know for those of you who have seen it, but literally listening to, folks like Jim Brown at the time, Malcolm X and Sam Cooke and Muhammad Ali. And really it was that so many of the people that had the power or had, control over crowds that had that fandom, they would utilize it in these different ways. And so, it is a part of our history, man.
I'm going to tell you like this, though. I was talking to Buki Gates earlier. Buki Gates, Baseball Beyond Borders. And, the flip side of it is it is like we left a game that we owned. The only game that black people owned was baseball, the Negro leagues, Negro stadiums, Negro concessions, Negro buses and bus drivers, Negro tailors to make the uniforms, Negro fans and everything. We had a game that we owned that was an economic driver in our community. But we felt so badly we wanted to be on the level of white people that we abandoned Negro League baseball and that economic driver that it was, so we could be looked at as equal. Look at everything Jackie Robinson, all these other people went through. We owned that game. That's the only game we can say we owned in America was baseball. You go across America, Negro League stadiums and this and that, and some of these greats in the Negro League. We left an economic driver because we wanted to be just as good as white folks, and we left something. I mean, it's the same could be said, the Montgomery bus boycott, a powerful thing for sure. But, during that bus boycott, black bus companies arose, and black people was driving each other. It was black commerce around transportation. And we wanted so badly to be equal with white people. We wanted so badly to be on that bus that we got on the bus. Black transportation, black economic drivers died, and Montgomery ain't never made no real investment in public transport since. So it's interesting right here that it's like, man, you know what? All these years later, when we talk about baseball, a game that we owned ourselves in our own communities and everything else. There was even a Negro League right here in Seattle. The Black Heritage Society of Washington tell you about it. You know what I'm saying? There was some former Buffalo soldiers early on playing baseball out here. And it's now that it's like, okay, now we look at it and we're like, oh, equality around the game and everything. But it just makes you wonder, look at what we give up, especially economic drivers in our community. We give up so we can have a sense of being equal and, and playing in the same game and sitting at the same seat. Man, sometimes I think we just need to focus on our own, fam.
Hey, you know what? I'm just loving that you said that, because that's really at the center of what I'm teaching my kids. I mean, when we think about the roaring towns of the 20s, we could talk about baseball, we could talk about the buses, but ultimately it was everything. When you had your own restaurants, you had your own nightclubs, you had your own educational institutions, regardless of how they were looked at in a national front. Those were all elements of us being culturally rooted and of us bringing in our own tradition. It really was. And so much of it, I always go back to the end of Dr. King. And when he said, man, I feel like I've led my people into a burning bush, that right there is the ethos for me. It's like the antithesis for me. It's like the central, the nucleus. It could be so many different things, but what we have seen in this country as it has played out over time, man, you are absolutely right. Whether it was equality or equity or whatever, ultimately, when we had our own, many will tell you we were better off.
Let me tell you something. Black people have always paid the price here for integration, even when schools are integrated. Man, you know how many black teachers was fired You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I mean, we've always paid the price. So we're gonna keep an eye. We want to give a big thanks, like I said, to JC over at the OVT Network. Man, go ahead, check him out. Look forward to like having him on. Hopefully, we'll have him on here live during the morning update show one of these days. Here, we're gonna take a quick break for ZYD, and when we come back, I got one more good story for you, Trey. You're watching the morning update show.
Public Health, Seattle, King County, Zero Youth Detention, along with our partners from across the South King County region, are committed to reducing violence and creating the conditions needed for our neighborhoods to be safe and free of crime. Too often, the response to crime and violence has been a piecemeal approach with a program here and a program there. When family units collapse, schools fail to educate, the economy fails to produce jobs, and crime rises, we've looked to law enforcement and punitive measures to save us. Nothing could be more wrong or further from the truth. Law enforcement can't shoulder all the burden or take the rest of us off the hook. We are acknowledging the lived experiences of Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. We are centering community as the experts who can effectively identify key issues related to systems, policies, and practices that impact children, families, and communities of color across this region. Those most impacted by the issues will help call out and identify the root causes, including structural and systemic factors. 150 residents will partner with King County to develop strategies, solutions, and an action plan that explicitly addresses system changes needed and eliminates barriers to access for Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. These residents will also identify the criteria used to measure our collective success. Simply put, we need your help as we do the work needed to make King County the safest in this country. It will take specific commitments from all of us, community members, our young people, elders, and leaders from the sectors all across this region. Together, we will get this work done. Please click the link below and sign up for a work group. Or you can recommend a co-facilitator from community for each work group. We look forward to hearing your ideas, concerns, feedback, and solutions as we build a community where all our children can be happy, healthy, hopeful, safe, and thriving.
I wanted not only to keep myself motivated, but I wanted to help keep others motivated as well, to inspire them, encourage them, and kind of eradicate some types of forms of depression, isolation, fear, and despair.
It just kind of gave all of us a boost that we eventually would get out of this pandemic. Things were going to be all right, and then eventually we would return back to Metropolitan Baptist Church on a regular basis. It was a lot about faith and being able to overcome whatever trials or tribulations they may have been experiencing, knowing that there was a Savior and there was a way that we could tap into that resource. And with the hurricanes and floods and wildfires, all those kinds of things, and mass shootings, that people are looking for hope. They're looking for something or someone to kind of elevate them in something positive.
You know, we always got to end the show in like in a good way.
I love it. You know, I just got to say too, right now, my grandmother is so excited to get back to church. You know what I mean? I saw her yesterday. She had her lashes on, honey. Don't play with her. She was ready to go. So I love that. Very inspiring.
All right. Before we get out of here, any last words today?
Man, clearly we still have work to do, guys. You know, when you see yourself as a part of the solution, you know, Zero Youth Detention and their work groups is one way. There's multitude of ways that you can get yourself involved. You all have something that would be so great as an addition. So see yourself as a part of the solution. We got work to do, y'all.
All right, good stuff. So at 1:00, we're actually going live. There's a discussion around this recent Supreme Court ruling around simple possession. So they're having a discussion about that. I think that what it is there's other cities that are wanting to navigate around that law and make their own kind of ordinances in different counties and cities. So there's a discussion at 1:00. We'll be carrying that live. Nikki Barron is still on vacation. And so there's no coronavirus update show tonight. That means I'm off tonight.
Yeah, look at you.
All right now. But I'll be at the M's game anyway. The M's game starts at 7. Coronavirus is at 6. But M's game starts at 7. So you'll find me, Jake Gravbrot, and Eric Calligraphy at T-Mobile Park. Tonight, the Mariners take on the Sox. We're really excited, man. You know what I'm saying? Really, I can't tell you guys how excited I am. I'm so excited I'm rambling. That being said, I want to remind you, go forward in your purpose and go forward in your humanity. And until tomorrow at 11 a.m., peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has facing the rising sun of a new day.